Hey everyone! Today I'll be setting up February in my common planner, but first, I'd also like to flip through January with you and discuss my experience being in this planner for a month. What worked, what didn't work, etc. As some of you may know, this is the first year that I'm using a Sterling Ink common planner, as well as using a planner with Tomoe river paper. So in case you're new to this planner as well, or if you're just curious how a newbie has been using this planner, I hope you enjoy the video and let's jump right in. So a little backstory for those of you who are new here. I had been an avid bullet journaler for 7 straight years, and this is the first year where I am not bullet journaling and that I am in a dated planner instead. So I haven't used a dated planner since college, and they were typically ones that were either provided from my school or one that I would just purchase from Walmart or Target. But this is my first boutique or luxury dated planner, so I really wanted to pay attention to how my planning style is responding to this new environment. So let's dive in, shall we? So if you've seen any of my previous videos, you'll see that I've added a few new things to my common planner, so I'll go ahead and start with that. The first thing being this cover that I purchased from Paper Bound Creations off of Etsy. So I actually just got it about a week ago, but I've been really happy with it so far. The shop had a lot of great reviews, so I thought it would be a good place to order a cover from. So this one here is the clear with holographic glitter, and it is the B6 cover that they offer. But she does offer a nice variety of colors and styles, so definitely check her out if you are also interested in a simple and clear cover like this. It did take a little bit of force to get the cover on, especially with how bendy and flexible the common planner cover is, but it wasn't too much of a struggle, fortunately. You'll just want to be gentle and take your time putting it on. But anyway, I just wanted a simple cover for some added protection for my planner, since it is my everyday carry, and like I mentioned, the planner cover is quite flexible and on the thinner side, so I wanted to get something a little bit more durable and also waterproof. I also wanted a clear cover since I still want to be able to see the beautiful brown cover of the planner, but I also love holographic glitter, so I definitely could not pass that up. And then moving on to the tabs. So I recently picked up some tabs from Midori to mark important pages in my planner. The first 3 gold tabs here are adhesive ones, which I thought would be perfect for marking permanent pages that I will need to reference all year, such as this master bills list, future plans, and this when did I last spread, my goal breakdown page, as well as my yearly tracker. For these repositionable metal copper tabs, then these are to mark pages temporarily throughout the year since I'll need to move them throughout the year, some more than others. For instance, the first one here marks the Q1 spread that I will move around as needed depending on what quarter it is at the time. This next tab marks the current month that we're in, so currently as I'm filming this, then it is still January. So I just have January marked. The 3rd tab here marks the current week that we are in. And the 4th tab here marks the next blank page in the blank note sections in the back. So this first tab will need to be moved every quarter. The 2nd tab will need to be moved every month. This 3rd tab will need to be moved every week. And this 4th tab will need to be moved every time I write a journal entry or take notes. So having these tabs have already been such a huge game changer for me in terms of user experience with this planner. So having to reference so many different areas in the planner frequently really requires tabs or some way to bookmark your pages to make your planning process more efficient. Now let's go ahead and take a look at January to see what worked and what didn't. So starting with my priorities, I have to say that I didn't succeed at all of these. I definitely struggled with falling asleep by 10:30 p.m. each night. Sometimes I would, but other times it would be later due to a social event or it being the weekend. I really struggled to wake up at 6:30 each morning. That's something that has been pretty difficult for me to do consistently for a long time now, so as much as I would have loved for that habit to be resolved with the new year, it's definitely something that I still need to work on. Exercising for 30 minutes 5 days a week has also been difficult for me to achieve. I'd have some occasions where I'd work out for multiple consecutive days, but also have a gap for a few days. I personally prefer to work out in the morning or as soon as possible after waking up, but because my wake up time has been so inconsistent, I also find it hard to get around to working out too, which is something I've learned in the past that if I wake up early, I'm more likely to get my workout out of the way as well. So I think I either need to wake up earlier to work out or work out later in the day, which isn't my personal preference, but it has to be done regardless. In terms of intermittent fasting, I did track or indicate when I was eating and when I was fasting, which you'll see later in my weekly spreads, but one thing I realized that I didn't specify was how many hours I should fast for and how many hours I should eat within. So that's something I would want to be more specific about moving forward. I did clean and declutter the bathroom cabinet, but I did not get a chance to do the hallway closet yet. However, I did pay off my credit card bill and I also finished the re-verifications for work. So in preparation for this video, then I wanted to go ahead and just brainstorm some priorities for February. So I went ahead and just wrote them down on one of these little sticky notes, and I just went ahead and stuck it into my planner here and just let it sit for a couple of days while I thought about it. So at this point, I don't think that there's anything that I really want to change, so I will go ahead and just copy these down into this February box here, and those will be my priorities for the month. Alright, so I went ahead and just copied down everything off of this post-it note that I had brainstormed a few days ago. And then I also went and wrote everything in using my Uniball Signo DX gel pen in the 0.28mm size. I've mentioned this before that this is my preferred pen to use in my planner. The only thing that I did decide to change was when I was brainstorming on the post-it note, then I wrote exercise for 30 minutes 4 days a week, but I did decide to bump it back up to 5 days a week. Even though I was not successful in doing that in January, that is something that I would continue to at least try to do, and to just continue to hold myself accountable for it by writing it down. So I would say that this is what I would like to prioritize for February. I think that there are definitely a lot of similarities compared to January, but it's definitely things that I would just like to improve on overall in my life and continue working towards. So basically, my goals for February are to figure out what to do with our old car, just because very recently, a few days ago, then my husband and I did purchase a new car, which was very exciting and a huge step for us. So now we are in the process of getting all of that figured out, as well as trying to figure out what to do with my old car. And then another thing that I would like to be more mindful about is just to no longer have anything to eat after 7 p.m. just to kind of go along with the intermittent fasting. Then that's something that I would just want to be more mindful about. I did end up changing the bedtime to 11 p.m. so that is something that I would like to try and be more firm about, especially on the nights where I have like social obligations. Then I would like to try and be better about my bedtime, and then also getting up at 7 a.m. I don't know if the 30 minutes will really make that huge of a difference, but it's worth a try. If I'm able to get up earlier than 7 a.m., then that's just even better in my opinion. Again, with the intermittent fasting, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to be more specific about the time frame. So I specified by saying that I would fast for at least 16 hours, at least 5 days a week. And then again, the same exercise goal as I had for January. And then because we just recently bought a new car, then I want to focus more on saving money and just hopefully be able to pay off the car as soon as possible. So yeah, those are basically my goals for February. Let's go ahead and move on to the habits. So I did write a little note here on a sticky note My mind must have been somewhere else when I wrote hobbies, but I meant to say habits. So I basically just wanted to note that I wanted to keep the same habits, but change 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. instead, just to match my goal that I had written over here. So let's go ahead and fill in the habits for February. Alright, so in case you are unfamiliar with the habits that I have, this first one here just is in regards to if I worked out that day, then if I did my morning routine, if I woke up at 7 a.m., if I did my daily devotion, if I took my vitamins, if I journaled, if I did not spend, and if I did my night routine. So just to use January as an example, if I did accomplish that habit that day, then I would go ahead and just cross it off for that day. So as you can see for January, then there are definitely a lot of gaps. The two that I would say are definitely the most inconsistent would be the working out and waking up at 6:30 a.m. So that is something that I would like to just try and be better at in February, now that I have almost an entire month's full of data to look back on. So at the time that I'm filming this, January is not quite over yet, so there are just a few days left, but I'm going to try my hardest and try and fill in as many of the habits for the remaining days of January. And then really quick, I do want to just go ahead and show you my yearly tracker. So there are definitely a lot of different things that you can do with this page. Like I mentioned in my 2025 Common Planner setup, I said that I wanted to use this page mainly to track my workouts, my weight, as well as when I get my period. So I did want to go ahead and just show you how January has looked so far. So as you can see, then I went ahead and wrote down whatever workout I did on the top line, and then the line below it, then that's where I put my weight. And then for these red boxes over here, then that was when I got my period for the month. So I feel like this will definitely be a good way for me to look back on the entire year and just kind of see how my weight fluctuates when I worked out, as well as when I got my period. Alright, so let's go ahead and flip over to the monthly sections. So let's start with January and just take a look at what worked and what didn't work. So as you can see, I did add some stickers and decorated it. If you had seen my 2025 Common Planner setup video, then I mentioned how I just wanted to add a little bit of decoration, and I didn't want to cover up a lot of the space just yet, to kind of get a gauge on how much space I would actually need to use. So for the month of January, then I did some expense tracking down here on the bottom, which personally I did not like. I think moving forward, what I would like to do is to track my expenses on this sidebar here and possibly put the to-do list down here. I think that looking back at January, it is reasonable for me to add a little bit more decoration moving forward, just because I do like to write out a lot of the plans in the actual calendar, and I don't really have that much extra stuff that I need to write out on the side. So with that being said, then let's go ahead and set up the month of February. So like I mentioned earlier with the other post-it notes, then I was just doing some brainstorming. This is definitely one thing that I have been kind of struggling with already, just because when I was in the bullet journaling system, then I would purposely create like a year at a glance page where I would write out all of the months of the year, and then I would highlight specific days and write down everyone's birthday, any appointments, when bills come out. That way I would have all of that stuff written out ahead of time, and I would easily be able to just flip back to that page and reference the entire year. There's not really an option to do that in this planner. I suppose if I would have thought about it before, I think if I were to do this over, what I would have done was actually reference this calendar page and possibly write down like important dates over here, or I would have done the year at a glance on this page and write down like all of those special events and whatnot. Just because up until I got these little post-it notes, then I didn't really know how to mark things down in like future months without actually like writing them down just yet. But this is actually something that one of you lovely viewers suggested that I talk about, was how I plan to use these little post-it notes in my planner. So this is likely the way that I would continue to use them, especially in this planner, just because, like I mentioned, there's not that year at a glance in the beginning. And so what I think I would do moving forward is before the month actually starts, then I'll go ahead and just write down when appointments are on one of these little post-it notes and then just paste it into the month that it's in. And that way, if things end up changing and if the appointments end up needing to be rescheduled, I can easily just move it around as needed. And then when it comes time to actually set that month up, then I won't already have something written down in the month, if that makes any sense. So I hope that that kind of gives you a better idea of how I want to mark down like future plans before the month has been set up yet, which I think these little post-it notes are perfect for. So I think that this will definitely give me some peace of mind moving forward into the year, and that way I can have a place to write down like tentative plans or appointments before I actually get around to setting that month up. So with that being said, let's go ahead and add some decorations. I think what I'll do is add like the decorations first and then remove the post-it notes and then write the actual plans and events onto the page. So just taking a look through my little sticker book from MU, then I have this gorgeous set of transfer stickers also from the brand MU, and it has this beautiful vintage typewriter on it. So I think I want to try and use as many of these transfer stickers as possible, and I think this will ultimately be like the theme for February. So let's go ahead and apply these. So a couple of extra tools to help me apply the stickers that I'm grabbing are this Shitajiki or writing board to help serve as a solid surface behind the page. And then I'm also going to be using this wooden applicator, which will help to add the pressure to the transfer sticker and apply it onto the page, as well as my scissors here. So I think what I want to do is put the typewriter down here. I think that that'll work very nicely in this corner here, just because these last two boxes for Saturday and Sunday are actually for March. So I think what I'll do is just cut out this entire center portion with the typewriter, the envelopes, as well as the coffee, and then just apply it to the page down here. Alright, so I went ahead and just decorated the rest of the page off camera. I basically just followed the same steps and used pretty much like the majority of the rest of that sticker sheet and just transferred the stickers onto the page. As you can see, it just blends into the page very seamlessly. I really love how these stickers just look like they are actually a part of the page. So it's very nice since it doesn't add very much bulk to these thin pages, which is really good, something that I'll go ahead and kind of get into a little bit later. But I think as of right now, I'll go ahead and just transfer everything that's on these post-it notes onto the actual page itself. Alright, so I think I'm pretty much done setting up the monthly spread for February. I just went ahead and added in all of the birthdays, bills, appointments, events, etc. throughout the month. I just added a cute little Dion sticker down here to mark 2 years since we got him. So I think this is all that I'm going to do in terms of decoration for now. I think the last thing that I will go ahead and add real quick using my Tombow Fudenosuke Hard Tip. I've just been using this to write out a to-do heading, and that way I can go ahead and just add some tasks underneath and check it off like how I did in January. So I'll go ahead and add that down here like how I mentioned earlier. I want to try and utilize the sidebar more for like my expense tracking. So now I have that written down there, just like how I had added it to the side over here. And then I would just add some tasks to do, like for instance, schedule Homer and Dion's annual checkup. Then once that's complete, then I'll go ahead and just add a little check mark to it. So that is something that I've been liking to do, where there are specific tasks that I need to get done during that month, but it doesn't necessarily have to be done during a specific day. But I also don't want to forget about it. So I've been liking to incorporate that now as well. All right, so next we can go ahead and flip over to the weekly spreads. And I'll go ahead and flip through the January weekly spreads before I set up the first week in February. So as some of you may be familiar with this week from a video that I posted a couple weeks ago, this was the first full week that I've experienced in a planner like this. And I am very happy with how it turned out. I thought that it was a lot of fun to set up, but it was definitely time consuming. But it wasn't really concerning to me at the time to keep up with, just because I felt like I had enough time to set aside and invest my time into making this spread look very filled out and nice. Here is the second week. Again, I was quite consistent with continuing to fill out as much space as I possibly could. And then you'll see every week I end up changing this color on the side here, but that just goes back to what I was talking about earlier in the monthly goals section, where I was keeping track of when I was fasting. So the colored marks, which like I mentioned, changes every week, then that just indicates when I was fasting, and then these blank areas in between just indicates when I was consuming things. Another thing to note is that I blocked off my schedule in terms of my full-time job. So 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. I just drew out like a little bracket for Monday through Friday. Then as you can see, then I don't carry that into the weekend. And then I also started doing the same thing for when I have like social events, such as when I have my weekly talks with my sister, or when we have game night, as well as date night with my husband. So things that end up taking several hours or a larger chunk in my day, then I like to just indicate that with the brackets. And this was also the week that I got my period, and so for a while I was keeping track of each day of my cycle. So when I started it on the 7th, then I just continued to write down like what day it was in the cycle. So that is something that I do have to mindfully keep track of and be on top of in my planner. And then for week 3, you'll see that it is a little bit different. For the first 2 weeks, then I ended up pasting in some stickers at the bottom here, but as I thought more about it, I'm going to try not to do that every week. I definitely still want to be able to incorporate that every now and then, but over time, if I'm only focusing on adding stickers on the bottom here, then it'll end up creating quite a bit of bulk later in the planner. So this bottom part would be significantly thicker and more raised than the rest of the page, if that makes sense. So to still add some decoration for my weekly spreads at the bottom here, then I just decided to go ahead and use my watercolors to add kind of like that wintry forest type of theme without adding any additional bulk to it. So that was what I ended up deciding to do instead of adding the stickers. Another thing that I started incorporating for the 3rd week of January was that to-do list. So I was finding that I had some tasks that I didn't want to necessarily like assign up here, where if there was something that I knew I needed to do for a specific day, then I would go ahead and write it at the top here. But when there are certain things that I don't necessarily need to do on a specific day, and sometimes not even like that specific week, but I don't want to forget that it needs to be done, then I started just adding like a to-do list here on the side. And I feel like that's been very helpful for me because I've been using just a simple heading, but dramatic enough to where my eyes will look at it and fixate on it. Then it brings the attention back to the things that I do need to still accomplish at some point. So that was something that I was really happy to introduce into my weeks. But again, just spending a lot of time decorating each and every day and making specific stickers for the events that would happen that day. Moving on to week 4, as you may see with this weekend, then things started to fall off just a little bit. I still managed to try and fill it up as much as I could, but this ended up being quite the busy week for me. There were a lot of things going on. It was the week of my birthday, It was also the week that we decided that we were going to get a car. I had an out-of-town appointment that I also needed to go to, and the weekend was pretty packed, spending time with family. So when the weekend came around, I honestly just did not have that much time on my hands to sit down with all of my supplies and materials and draw and color up these very specific stickers that I was really enjoying doing before when I had the time. But honestly, when I just didn't have the time to do that, it was stressful for me to try and figure out how to fill in all of the space. So as you can see, I definitely tried my best. At this point on Saturday, to be completely honest with you, I didn't even open my planner that day. It was so incredibly busy. That was the day that we had to go and pick up our car. So I didn't get a chance to even work on my planners on Saturday. So when I woke up on Sunday, then I pretty much just spent a few hours filling everything in this planner and catching everything up, as well as my Hobonichi, which I will show in a separate video. But yeah, so what I ended up doing was I ended up resorting to some of these cat stickers that I recently got from JetPens, but I basically just chose out a few that I felt like were close enough to resemble like what I was doing at the time, or like kind of the mood that I was in at the time. And then I just ended up journaling about it, which I'm personally fine with how it turned out. It's definitely not as colorful and made up as the previous weeks, let alone the previous days leading up to it, but I think that it also just provides more of a realistic glance on what a busy day could potentially look like in my planner when I don't have a lot of time to create my own stickers. I do think that it's really cute, and I do appreciate kind of more of like the minimalist decoration to it, and then just being able to write down a little bit more about what happened that day instead. And then I'll go ahead and just kind of show you the previous week that we're on. So I'm currently filming this on Tuesday. Right now then it's looking pretty blank. I already went ahead and started adding like a watercolor painting down here. So this is how the current week looks like. And then we'll go ahead and just kind of map out things for the first week of February. So let's go ahead and flip it over. As you can see, I did go ahead and just write down Homer and Dion's checkup at 10 a.m. just because I wrote this down when I first scheduled it, but I wasn't sure exactly what I was doing in terms of like future monthly planning yet. But now that I have those little post-it notes, then I think I figured out like how I will go about doing that in the future. So anyway, let's go ahead and just kind of start planning for this first week of February. So to start off, I'm going to block out my schedule for my full-time job using a little plastic ruler here, as well as my SAXA Pigment Micron in the 01 size. I like using this one just because if I were to go over it, let's say with like that marker that I use for my intermittent fasting, then it won't smudge this one. Whereas if I were to draw that line out with my Uniball Signo, then it would smudge. So let's go ahead and draw this out. So what I like to do first is just draw out the vertical line. So starting at 8 down to 430. So I just go inwards one box, and that way it'll create that bracket when I come back and add that horizontal line. For Thursday here, then I like to flip it upside down just because I feel like it's a little awkward to try and lay the ruler flat. So I like to just flip it upside down so that it's easier to lay the ruler down flat. And then I can just flip it back over for Friday. Alright, so now I'm just going to come back to the top here and then add that little dash. And then typically I would also do the same thing like when we have our talks every Tuesday night, as well as our game nights on Wednesday night. But I usually like to wait until I've confirmed with my sister that we will be talking the same day, same time next week. Sometimes there are things that end up coming up, and so I like to wait until I've confirmed that with her the week before I come back in and draw the brackets out. So I'll go ahead and hold off on marking those out for Tuesday and Wednesday, but I know for sure that my husband and I like to do our date nights on Friday, so I'll go ahead and block off that time. And then for my social events, since I don't have like a for sure time on when things are going to end, then I don't close off the bracket at the bottom. Instead, I just leave it open indefinitely. And then in case you're curious why I have like some numbers written down up here, it's because, like I mentioned earlier, I'm just keeping track of the days in my cycle. So that's why I ended up writing like some numbers up here, so you can go ahead and disregard that. But taking my Tombow Fudenosuke Hard Tip, I'm just going to write out that to-do heading so that I can go ahead and start adding tasks down once this week starts. Alright, so I'm just going to flip back over to the monthly spread and take a look at the first week and what I have going on. So for the first week, as you can see, then there are a couple of birthdays, a couple of bills, an appointment, and then also the Super Bowl. So I will go ahead and just copy this information over to the weekly spread. And then I do have a couple of work meetings that I would like to mark down for this week, such as the admin meeting on Monday at 9, and then the team meeting at 10 on Tuesday. So I think the last thing that I would like to do for this weekly setup would just be to add a sticker for our date night, kind of like how I have been doing for the previous weeks. Then I like to just add a sticker and then add the heading with a Tombow Fudenosuke. So I'll go ahead and just do the same thing. These were some stickers that I ended up making earlier in the month, so I will go ahead and just take one of these of my husband and I and paste it in. So I think that should be it in terms of setting up my weekly spread. Typically, I like to just leave out like the decorations until I get a better idea of what time I'm going to be going to sleep that night. And that way I can go ahead and decorate the bottom as needed. I think what I might do is just continue to use watercolors, or I'll go ahead and just paste in some more of these stickers from that same sticker sheet as the typewriter one. So this concludes the February setup, but to finish off the January flip through portion, then I'll go ahead and show you the January pages that I've done so far in the back section here. So if you are unfamiliar with the Common Planner, then it has like the yearly spreads in the beginning, and then it has these weekly spreads, and then pretty much the rest of the book and majority of the book are just these blank graph pages. I'll go ahead and show you what I've done so far. I won't show you like these first two pages just because those are kind of where I planned out like some videos for the first part of the year, so I don't want to spoil any surprises. But I did mainly just focus on journal entries. So I definitely did not journal every single day in January. I kind of resorted more of that to my Hobonichi, which, like I mentioned, I will go ahead and do a full separate flip through in a later video. But I just ended up doing some extra journal entries in here because I'm doing like the daily entries in my Hobonichi. Then I wanted to be very mindful about doubling up on information. I wouldn't necessarily call it an issue, but something that I just have to be more mindful about is making sure that I don't write the same exact things in both planners. Otherwise, I feel like that's pretty redundant and kind of a waste in my opinion. But yeah, this is when I was doing like the pens and supplies test on this paper. And then just some more journal entries back here. The reason why I'm focusing more on like journal entries and I'm not so much adding like too many decorations back here is, like I said, I just don't want to add too much bulk to this planner, especially since I've already been adding so many stickers up front in the weekly spreads. I kind of want to just keep these blank spreads in the back more minimal. These were just some things that I received in the mail. This sticker and this card came from that Paper Bound Creations where I got this cover from. Tested out a few new pens that I received as a birthday gift. And yeah, that's basically all that I've done for January so far. As you can see, I've made it to page 24, so it was almost a page every day, but I'm not being too harsh on myself to try and journal in this every day, but the goal is to definitely use up all of these pages by the end of the year, which I definitely think is doable. I really love journaling, and currently I don't have just a completely separate journal that I can write freely in. I'm trying to just maximize everything that I can in the Common Planner as well as my Hobonichi, since those two are my only two planners this year. So yeah, that was January in my Common Planner as well as my February setup. So let me know what you think. I really hope that you enjoyed watching the video, and thank you so much for watching. It really does mean so much to me. Let me know how your 2025 planner has been going and if you've made any personal adjustments so far. And yeah, let me know if there are any future video ideas that you would like to see from me. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.